I was recalling 20 years ago in the run-up to the Iraq War, I was on national television virtually every day. News night, question time, 6 o'clock news, 10 o'clock news, sometimes 3 in one evening. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, Channel 4 news, then off to news night in the evening. In those 20 years, no pretense is now made that the public deserve a proper debate, a balanced set of speakers and narratives so that they can make up their mind. Where did it all go wrong?
At its core, I think sometimes people believe that media organizations are fed a narrative. And sometimes that is the case, right? There's a top-down story that's dictated. But what's even more worrying to me, George, is in the newsrooms that I've worked in, the journalists, who by their very nature are inherently pretty critical individuals, right? They try to lean on the side of accuracy and fact-checking. They actually believe the things that they propagate. And that, for me, is the really terrifying part. And the question is, well, why do they believe that? And if I look back at my time, for example, at CNN International, I was at the London office in 2016. There were 200 editorial staff. I was the only one that I know of that identified as Muslim. Can you imagine, in a city like London, to have one person who identifies as Muslim, yet the Middle East might make up 20 to 30% of your overall news broadcast? So much so that they would come to me and say, hey, Yusuf, what do you think your opinion is on this story or that story? I'm like, I don't know. Go and ask an expert in the matter. So I think this critical lack of diversity in their news organizations means that they have such a skewed representation of reality. And this manifested in so many drastic ways in 2016 alone, right? We had the Trump election, which no traditional media anticipated, right? The average journalist was significantly more wealthy, educated, and left-leaning than the average American in the US. Same thing in the UK. No, for the most part, most of the traditional media didn't think Brexit was going to happen. They were speaking to London, and they were speaking to a very small base of people, and they weren't speaking to the broader population. And all the while, user-generated content, people with mobile phones, was taking off in a really significant way. But traditional media saw this as a threat because, to your point, for the longest of time, they had been the sole arbiters of truth. They'd held on to this monopoly in the ability to tell stories. And now that monopoly was being questioned. I mean, it was so bad. We once gave a speech. This was back in 2016, at a conference, and I spoke about this idea. I said, citizens can tell their own stories and journalists can fact check and verify it. And Nick Robinson, the political editor at the BBC at the time, he got up on stage in front of everybody. I was giving a speech and he said, what you're doing isn't journalism. What you're doing isn't news. I would rather die than do what you do, but it isn't journalism. Journalism is finding things out. And how badly have those comments aged? I mean, jump forward to today, George, and I would argue that the biggest stories of our time are brought to you by people on the ground with mobile devices. And that trajectory is only going to continue.